Okay, so this is the first few pages of War Dogs. Down to earth. I'm trying to go home. As the poet said, if you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are. Home is where you go to get all that sorted out. Hoofing it outside Sky-based Lewis McCord, I'm pretty sure this is Washington State. I'm pretty sure I'm walking along Pacific Highway. And this is the 21st century and not some fidging movie. But then a whining roar grinds the air and a broad shadow sweeps the road, eclipsing cafes and pawn shops and loan joints, followed seconds later by an eye-stinging haze of rocket fuel. I swivel on aching feet and look up to see a double egg and hawksbill burn down from the sky, leaving a rainbow trail over the McCord field. And I have to wonder. I just flew in on one of those after 8 months into that. 4 going out, 3 back. 7 blissful months in time out, stuffed in a dark tube and soaked in cosmoline. All for 3 weeks in the ship. Rough, confusing weeks. I feel dizzy. I look down, blink out the sting, and keep walking. Cosmoline still fidgets with my senses. Here on Earth, we don't say fuck anymore. The gurus don't like it, so we say fidge instead. Part of the price of freedom. Out in the red, we say fuck as much as we like. The angels edit our words so the gurus won't have to hear. SN crazy. Joe has a funny story about fuck. I'll tell you later, but right now I'm not too happy with Joe. We came back in separate ships. He did not show up at the mob center. And my Cougar is still parked outside Skyport, Virginia. I could grab a shuttle into town, but Joe told me to lie low. Besides, I badly want time alone, time to stretch my legs, put down one foot after another. There's the joy of blue sky if I can look up without keeling over, and open air without a helm, and minus the rocket smell. There's a newness in the nose and a beauty in the lungs. In a couple of clicks still, my insteps pinch and my calves knot. Earth tugs harsh after so long away. I want to heave. I straighten and look real serious, clench my jaws, shake my head, barely manage to keep it down. Suddenly, I don't feel the need to walk all the way to Seattle. I have my thumb and a decently goofy smile, but after half an hour and no joy, I'm making up my mind whether to try my luck at a mini-mall Starbucks when a little blue electric jog creeps up behind me, quiet as a bad fart. Quiet as not good. I spin and try to stop shivering as the window rolls down. The driver is in her 50s, reddish hair, rooted gray. For a queasy moment, I think she might be MHAT sent from Madigan. Joe warned me, for Christ's sake, after all that's happened, stay away from the doctors. MHAT is short for Military Health Advisory Team, but the driver is not from Madigan. She asks where I'm going. I say downtown Seattle. Climb in, she says. She's a colonel's secretary at Lewis, a pretty ordinary grandma. She has these strange gray eyes that let me see all the way back to when her scorn shaped men's lives. I ask if she could take me to Pike Place Market. She's good with that. I climb in. After a while, she tells me she had a son just like me. He became a hero on Titan, she says. But she can't really know that because we aren't on Titan yet, are we? I say to her, sorry for your loss. I don't say, glad it wasn't me. How's the war out there, she asks. Can't tell, ma'am, just back and still dropping. They don't let us know all we want to know, barely tell us all we need to know because we might start speculating and lose focus. She and I don't talk much after that. Fidging, Titan, sounds old and cold. What kind of suits would we wear? Would everything freeze solid? Mars is bad enough. We're almost used to the red. Stay sharp on the dust and rocks, that's where our shit is at. Leave the rest to the generals and the gurus. All part of the deal, a really big deal. Titan. Jesus. Grandma in the too quiet electric drives me north to Spring Street, then west to Pike and First, where she dropped me off with a crinkle-eyed smile and a warm, sad finger squeeze. The instant I turn and see the market, she pips from my thoughts. Nothing has changed since back training at SPLM, when we tired of the local bars and drove north looking for trouble but ending up right here. We like the market, the big neon sign, the big round clock, tourists and merchants and more tourists and that ageless bronze pig out in front. A little girl in a pink frock sits astride the pig, grinning and slapping its polished flank. What we fight for. I'm in civvies, but cosmoline gives your skin a tinge that lasts for days until you piss it out, so most everyone can tell I've been in timeout. Civilians are not supposed to ask probing questions, but they still smile like knowing sheep. Hey, spaceman, welcome back. Tell me true, how's the whack? I get it. A nice Laotian lady and her sons and daughters sell fruit and veggies and flowers. Their booth is a cascade of big and little peppers and hot and sweet peppers and yellow and green and red peppers. Walla Walla sweets and good strong brown and fresh green onions. red and gold and blue and russet potatoes, yams and sweet potatoes, pole beans, green and yellow and purple and speckled, beets baby and adult, turnips open boxed, and bulk attached to sprays of crisp green leaf. Around the corner of the booth I see every kind of mushroom but the screwy kind. All that roughage dazzles. I'm accustomed to browns and pinks, dark blue, star-powdered black. A salient of kale and cabbage stretches before me. I seriously considered kicking off and swimming up the counter, chewing through the thick leaves, inhaling the color, spouting purple and green. Instead, I buy a bunch of celery and move out of the tourist flow. Leaning against a corrugated metal door, I shift from foot to cramping foot, until finally I just hunker against the cool ribbed steel and wrap it down the celery leaves, dirt and all, down to the dense, crisp core. Love it. Good for time out time. Now that I've had my celery, I'm better. Time to move on. A mile to go before I sleep. I doubt I'll sleep much. Skyrenes share flop houses, safe houses, refuges around the major spaceports. My favorite is a really nice apartment in Virginia Beach. I could be heading there now, driving my Cougar across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, top down, sucking in the warm sea breeze, but thanks to all that happened and thanks to Joe, I'm not. Not this time. Maybe never again. I rise and edge through the crowds, but my knees are still shaky. I might not make it, so I flag a cab. The cabbie is white and middle-aged from Texas. Most of the fellows who used to cab here are Lebanese and Ethiopians and Sikhs. The younger ones, at least, are gone to war now. They do well in time out, better than white Texans. Brown people rule the back, some say. There's a lot of brown and black and beige out there. East and West Indians, immigrant Kenyans and Nigerians and Somalis, Mexicans, Filipinos and Malaysians, Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans, all varieties of Asian. Flung out in space frames, stick clumped up in fasces, and then they all fly loose, shoot out, puff, and drop to the red. Maybe less dangerous than driving a hack, it certainly pays better. I'm not the least bit brown. I don't even tan. I'm a white boy from Moscow, Idaho. A blue-collar IT wizard who got tired of working in cubicles, tired of working around shitheads like myself. I enlisted in the Skyrenes, worked through all the tests in boot and desert training, survived first orbital, survived first drop on the red, came home alive and relatively sane, and now I make good money. Flight pay and combat pay, they call it engagement bonus and cosmoline comp. Some say the whole deal of cellular suspension we call time out shortens your life, along with solar flares and gamma rays. Others say no. The military docs say no, but scandal painted a lot of them before my last deployment. A whole bunch of Madigan got augured for neglecting our spacemen. Their docs tend to regard spacemen, especially Skyrenes, as slackers and complainers. Another reason to avoid MHAT. We make more than they do, and still we complain. They hate us. Give them ground pounders any day. How many drops, the Texan cabbie asks. Too many, I say. I've been at him for 6 years. He looks back at me in the mirror. The cab drives itself. He's in the seat for show. Ever wonder why, he asks? Ever wonder what you're giving up to them? They ain't even human. Some think we shouldn't be out there at all. Maybe he's one of them. Ever wonder, he asks? All the time, he said. He looks miffed and faces forward. The cab takes me into Belltown and lets me out on a semicircular drive on the shadow of the high-rise called Sky Tower 1. I pay in cash. The cabby rewards me with a sour look, even though I give him a decent tip. He too pips through my mind as soon as I get out. Bastard. The tower's elevator has a glass wall to show off the view before you arrive. The curved hall on my floor is lined with alcoves, quiet and deserted this time of day. I key in the number code, the door clicks open, and the apartment greets me with a cheery pluck of ascending chords. Extreme retro, traditional Seattle, none of it Guru tech. It's from before I was born. Lie low, don't attract attention. Christ, no way am I used to being a spook. The place is just as I remember it. Nice and cool, walls gray, carpet and furniture gray and cloudy day blue, stainless steel fixtures with touches of wood and white enamel. The couch and chairs and tables are mid-century modern. Last year's Christmas tree is still up, the water down to scum and the branches naked. A Roomba has sucked up all the meals. Love Roomba. Also pre-guru, that rolls out of its chair slot and checks me out, nuzzling my toes, like a happy gray traveler. I finish my tour, checking every room twice, ingrained caution, nobody home. Then pull an Eames chair up in front of the broad floor-to-ceiling window and flop back to stare out over the sound. The big sky still makes me dizzy, so I try to focus lower down on the green and white ferries coming and going, and then on the nearly continuous lines of tankers and big cargo ships. Good to know Han Jen and Maersk are still packing blue and orange and brown steel containers along with Hogma or Hogler or what the hell. Each container is about 1/7 the size of your standard space frame. No doubt filled with clever goods made using Guru secrets. It's juicing our economy like a snuck of men. And for that, too, for them, we fight. So that's the first chapter, and he's back from a hideous adventure on Mars, which will be continued in the next book, taking you from Mars then to Titan. So as you find out how old is Titan and how cold is Titan. I'll tell you right now that both Mars and Titan are amazing environments. People ask me, why do you keep going back to Mars? I know this, I've been there. And you know, you write what you know, so Mars is still pretty familiar to me. I think you'll be familiar with it too by the time we're done here. Also, it's deep inner mysteries. There's one of our veterans back there. How you doing? I had a lot of good advice and people reading our books here. And come around, sit. And got a whole bunch of veterans to take a look at it from Korea, from Vietnam, and from Iraq, Afghanistan. And so we've got a good dedication page here which allows them to be respectful of those who are with them. So what I wanted to capture here was the whole feeling of what it means to be a vet, what it means to be a soldier in a war that you're not quite sure about, which is practically any war. I mean, anyone who's ever read war history knows that there is no good war, there is just a war you might survive. And even if you survive, when I was a kid in San Diego, I realized that there are a lot of homeless guys wandering around downtown San Diego in the 60s. Where did they come from? They came from the good war, and they also came from Korea. And they were the walking wounded. And so there's a bit of that in here too, this notion that there is no war that doesn't cause extraordinary damage inside and out. And you remember. So Michael Venn is a pretty strong guy, but he's also a bit of a walking wounded guy. And by the time this is all over, I think there's going to be some ass to be kicked. And that's the other thing about this, is you take power and you become a human being again once you leave the war behind. And once you take power, you can be anything you want. So that's what I've been working on for the last year and a half or so, and we got, as I said, we got book 2 almost in the can, and Hachette is waiting for it very patiently. They're surviving the stomping around of giants out there, which is pretty amazing to watch. I won't tell you all the stories about that.
How are you and Amazon getting along?
I love Amazon. I'm published by them. I'm published by Amazon, I'm published by Hachette. You know, they did our, with Mark, they did our, where's Mark? They did our Mongolia book and a lot of other stuff, and we've worked with them directly, and so we have a good relationship with the publishing side of Amazon. The distribution side of Amazon, I know very little about. So that's what's been going on, and that plus recovery and trying to figure out how to get back into the book and finish it. Which I figure I've got another month or so to figure that out. Every day something comes back online and I'm getting better and better. And the whole experience, as I say, is pretty amazing. Mostly because of so little pain. Irritation, aggravation, impediment, impatience, all that crap. But I really don't have too much to complain about yet. And if I do, I'll let you know. So any questions? Yes, sir. Wayne.
How long does it take to get to and from Mars with the, it wasn't really clear if the Gurus gave the technology for the trip besides the storage to all the people. It's clear how many tours you could do in a year.
Not more than one, but it's back and forth. So the Gurus, of course, give them technology according to their need. And Titan is a very different issue. Titan is a very long ways out there, about 1 billion miles. So the technology necessary to get to Titan is quite amazing. It's called a spook ship. It has skirts. The skirts aren't made of man. Beyond that, I won't describe. Also, our enemies, so-called enemies, in all of this are the antagonists. The antagonists drop comets on Mars from the Oort cloud with fair regularity, so our soldiers are not too happy with them. So, it's good to see you guys here. Any other questions? And yes?
Do you have clean water back on Mars then?
It does. Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of changes coming to Mars when they start dropping lots of comets on it.
Do you have a title you can share for book 2?
Killing Titan. Everybody wants to destroy Titan. Everybody. So that means it's got to be pretty.
Must be a bad place.
Yeah. No, it's not a bad place. It's really an amazing place. I don't know if you know much about what's going on with Titan and the moons out there, but nearly all of them appear to have sloshing inner oceans. Those oceans are not what we would call seawater, but they're very, very salty, all different kinds of salts. And with all of that ionic activity, almost certainly they could support life. There's enough liquid water, slushy water, there's enough organic chemistry out there that Titan is going to be utterly amazing when we get out there. And what our gurus are trying to hide from us and what we're going to find as we get out there is the secret of the origin of life in our solar system, which I've already got in book 1. You can kind of get a clue as to what's going on. Worlds. Yes.
Where are we in time?
40, 50 years? Long enough for Michael to be born.
Is it just going to be the 2 books in the series, or will it be?
No, there'll be a third one. And I'm not quite sure how that all ties in together, but I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Related to the issue of time, as I hear the phrase go by, mid-century modern, which century?
Yeah, it's
With the
antique.
Eames chair, it kind of had.
Yeah, the Eames chair is mid-century modern, it's antique,
Yeah.
and it's expensive, which means these soldiers actually do earn pretty good money, which is the one deviation from our combat troops today. In my experience as a Navy brat, we did okay, but we didn't earn an awful lot. That's Mark.
So from the perspective of someone who spent most of his time in the biomedical future way far and also relatively close to 2050, how do you feel about your recent experiences?
I'm just astonished. I didn't know this sort of thing happened, and I didn't know it could be fixed. If I'd heard about it happening, I wouldn't have thought it could be fixed. But in fact, when they got me into the operating room, they had a team of God knows how many people, and they put me at 18 degrees, dropped me down to near coma level, and then when everything was assembled and ready to go, they sewed me back up and put a Dacron tube in and a new valve. That took 45 minutes. The whole operation, cooling down and everything, took 8 hours. By 3 in the morning, I was out of the operating room, and by the next day, I was seeing Astrid in the ICU. And that was pretty astonishing, to be awake again. Because when the docs told me what was happening, they says, you need to talk to your family, you need to call your kids, and tell them this is dire. So poor Eric back here got this call. My son back there and fellow writer. Got this call and okay, bye-bye. I'll be checking out here. And our daughter had just rushed off to do a teaching gig at 826. And the next day, we were all getting back together again. So that was pretty astonishing. And I blame Cherry Hill for that. This was like a hotshot rock star surgical team at Seattle, at Cherry Hill. Swedish. And I wasn't there for it. Interestingly, my body was and deeply resents how it was treated. Because it's kind of claustrophobic now. It's going, don't do that again, not for a while now. That was not fun. Yeah.
Are these experiences going to show up in form any future writing, do you think?
You know what's astonishing about this? They're already in here. I can't eat a lot of kale. You heard about vitamin K?
Nice.
How about being soaked in cosmoline and stuffed in a tube? How about all this, freezing down and going off into space stuff? How about being in a strange environment and it wrapped up in a suit and all that kind of stuff? I have a weird tendency in my books to not quite understand what's going to be happening, but to write about it anyway.
How does it feel to officially be a cyborg now?
Yeah, and I'm not quite a $6 million man. We haven't got all the bills yet. This is not cheap, guys, and I'm grateful for every bit of it. I see Judith back there. How you doing?
I'm good.
You've been through this kind of crap too, haven't you?
No, a little bit.
Yeah, and anyway, sadder but wiser, let's sign books.